Flying solo is something that every student pilot waits for. But if something happened, you are all alone. For example, if you lost. Let's talk about that deeper with Mihara, and this is Pilotcast. So in this Pilotcast, I am with the chief flight instructor of Fortune Pilot Flight Academy. He's an FAA Gold Seal flight instructor. He's also an ATP, a captain from a Boeing 737, and he's also an alumni from the National Transportation Safety Board. Hi, Captain Gilma.
Hey, how are
doing?
you? Finally, you're a private pilot now.
Yeah.
Really proud of you.
I know.
I was the one who endorsed you for a check ride, isn't it?
You are.
Of course. And then we did a lot of training on your cross country.
Exactly.
So we're going to talk today.
Yeah. So today, I did mention about flying solo, and there's this one experience with you for flying solo, flying cross country. Actually, when we did the dual training for cross country,
Correct.
You made me lost. Like you trapped me in that, like in the middle of training the cross country.
Yeah, that's a good word. I trap you
Exactly.
into a lost situation.
Into a lost situation, and that is something really memorable for me, like throughout the training from private pilot. And this actually made me remember of like the one incident in Indonesia where there's this student pilot who conducted solo and they were lost. And the purpose of this podcast is actually to find not to find like who's to blame, but to take this as a lesson. So for you as a chief instructor who's also an alumni from the National Transportation Safety Board, do you have any key points or like do you have any advice or suggestion to this?
Yeah, I heard about that. And then finally the instructor has to go up there and then pick up the students from the air and coming back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to mention anyone about that,
Yeah.
but we learn about that lost lesson because it's not just happened this time, it's happened so many times, not
Yeah.
only in Indonesia, but in other countries. It's just because we're Indonesian and then our friend just told us about this information.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, and then we believe this podcast will help a lot of flight school instructors and also student pilots. So please guys, you can share this podcast to anyone who you think that this will be very beneficiary for them, right? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this solo. One of the most problem of the solo is we talk about the external pressure.
Okay.
So solo, there are three parties that really involved to the process. One is the student, of course. Two is the flight instructor, and three is the flight school itself.
I see.
And also, there's an external pressure. That's a culture in some country. Let's talk about Indonesia. I heard, like since long time ago, if the airlines that normally people go for aviation career is the airline, look up your logbook and they found that you're solo more than 15 hours or maybe 11 hours, it's really hard for you to get a job.
Yeah, I heard that too.
That's not a good culture
Okay.
because here's the thing. You only solo, okay, if you're ready. So that's the main thing. We don't want to release you for solo. You're pilot in command when you're solo, like you said, you're alone.
Exactly, yeah.
What is the definition of solo? You're sole occupant in the airplane. Okay, so it means there's no one, it's only you, and you are the one who will take the decisions whether the airplane or the flight can be conducted in the safety
Safe, yeah.
situation. So in the logbook, you're pilot in command. If you have emergency, everything is on you, but
Exactly.
it's not completely 100% on you. Me as the flight instructor, actually, I'm the real pilot in command on the ground because I sign you off the solo.
Yeah.
So if the student is not ready, because the solo is not just making takeoff and landings.
Exactly.
That's why in the FAA, we got a first solo. I think the ICAO country also same,
Yeah.
right? The first solo will be like the three takeoff, three landing, full stop, right? And then the second solo will be the cross country. There will be like a short cross country and then the
And the
long
long
cross
one.
country, about 150 miles, as
Yeah.
you experienced
That's
that
what I did,
before,
yeah.
right? So now, if you as students, I'm flight instructor, before I endorse you or CALET endorse you that time, we have the certain standards, especially in 14 the pilot. We strictly follow 6187. Okay, there's some maneuvers that you really need to be excel on that, and you have to show me and convince the other instructor that will endorse you for the solo, that you can complete all the maneuvers. Okay, so I cannot just like take you in the airplane and do 3 takeoff, 3 landings, or maybe 100 or 1,000 landing, and that's it. And then, all right, this is the key, go 3 takeoff, 3 landing, and your first solo done. No, in the FAA world, you need to follow 6187. There are certain maneuvers, including stall, spin awareness, emergency at altitude, steep turns, slow flights, and so on. You have to be able to do it, including the dead reckoning, unusual attitude, if you can remember, right? And then you have to be able to do homing, even though that's for the first solo. I mean, nobody lost in the traffic pattern, but the FAA requires us as a flight instructor to train you under the 6187 to make sure that you are proficient in that list of maneuvers for your first solo. Now, in that story, the students was lost not on the first solo, but on his area solo. So we don't have area solo in the States, but we have a airport to airport solo less than 25 miles. Right, which is I give you endorsement for repetition solo endorsement. You can go to the other airport within 25 miles, or you can go to the training area and do the maneuvers and coming back. You did it in Simi Valley. Right. So we call that area training solo in Indonesia.
I see.
Or Malaysia. It's basically the same. So basically you fly alone, go to the training area, do maneuvers, and coming back, building your time, building your experience. This guy lost. The instructor needs to come and pick him up from the air, bring the airplanes, and it's like escort, whatever. So now the question is how to prevent that happen. If you remember, this will be for the student first, okay? If you remember, before you went to United States, I addressed you to change that iPad. I asked you to buy the iPad. Right? And when you bought the iPad, what you bought is the iPad without the cellular. And then I said, you need to replace that. I don't care. Because that's the first thing. I want you to have your redundancy equipment in the air, because if you have that iPad with the cell and Wi-Fi, you will have the GPS in your iPad.
The moving plane.
The moving plane on your chart software. We can use ForFlight. You can use Garmin Pilot. Okay. So number one for the student, invest in an iPad with the chart or moving map installed. You will not lose if you have that.
Exactly.
If you lost while you have that moving map, you shouldn't be a pilot.
Because it's like very obvious.
You're gonna lose with that, right? You just put your finger, go to the airport, and that's it. Unless you fly when the weather sucks, there's a hazy and so on. That's why I don't endorse people when the visibility is less than VFR minimums, right? The ceilings, is not more than 6,000 or
like
sky clear.
Limitations and all.
Do you remember that it's really hard to endorse you to Santa Barbara that day? We need to go around the clouds and something like that. So I don't want you to lose because of the clouds, because when the clouds covering everything, and then we climb up there, and then I intentionally did it to you, climb up the holes, you're standing above the clouds, and
7,000 feet, I guess.
And you were under the hood. I intentionally did it, and then I asked you to take off the hood. Now where's Santa Barbara? You don't have any ground reference maneuvers because everything clouds below you. So that could be lost unless you know how to operate the VR.
And you also took my iPad.
I took your iPad.
So I don't have anything to see.
I intentionally make you lost, and I want to see how panicked you are that time.
And
right?
I was.
You were panicked, and then you don't know what to do, right? That's why. So for students, you got an iPad. Number two, you need to understand your area visually, no matter what. That's why I brought you up. And then I intentionally did it because I want you to fly above all the ocean of the clouds, right? So you cannot get any ground reference maneuvers, then you're lost. Okay, so you have to remember, if there's no sky clear, you're not going for area. Because you're going to fly above the clouds, and then the ground reference will be closed and covered by the clouds. So that's number two. You may want to check your Google Earth. Make sure within the 25 miles radius from your airport, you know the landmark.
Be familiar with it.
Be familiar, okay? Number three, you have to know how to use the ground navigation device. This period, no negotiable. I will never ever send the students for the solo, cross country or area without knowing and confirm that the student understand how to go back home with the viewer. I will never ever, right? Because something happened with them, the FAA will take my license.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they solo under your name.
Correct.
So.
And then I have to specifically lock all the trainings that I gave to the students based on the FAR, okay, 6193, then I can release you. So make sure you are proficient before you're solo with the viewer. Then if anything happen, overheat, iPad could be overheat.
Exactly.
Right? And then the GPS could be failure. If you have GPS on board, then you can use the viewer, just put twist until it's showing 2, and then get the needle center, and you just fly the heading. Right? Track it down there, and that's it. And also understand how to use the GPS on board. So why the airplane has the GPS and you still lost? That's unbelievable. It's definitely the instructor never ever tell you how to operate the GPS. Because somehow there's a moving map, but you are not familiar to pushing. It's even dangerous. You know what happened?
Yeah.
You got busy with the button, and then you forgot to fly the airplane.
Fly the airplane,
Flip, spin, die. Right?
Yeah.
So
that's your point.
if you want to use the avionics, you need to know how to use that. Okay? Like a second nature, how to push the button, how to put the direct, direct, enter. So I always teach that. If you use the Garmin 430, 530, and so on, it's always direct, enter.
Okay.
Nearest airport.
Like the muscle memory of using it.
Direct, nearest airport, of course, because if you put a direct, right, it's always load the nearest airport, which is if you're 25 miles, and if you're flying to Asia, there will not be much airport around. So direct, your airport, enter, and you still look outside. You never do head-down operation.
I see.
You're not instrument-rated pilot. See? So that's the GPS, and then understand the 5C concept. So what is 5C?
The 5C is the circle, climb, confess, conserve, communicate.
Correct. Beautiful, right?
Yeah.
You need to keep circling, make sure you are not hitting any obstacle. And then what else?
Climb.
Climb? So climb as high as you can, because you need to see like the bigger landscape. Okay, what else? The other one? Conserve. Okay.
So you save fuel.
Save fuel. Okay, don't go far.
Exactly.
And I always recommend you to know, let's say when you take off, what is your first direction to turn? So let's say you turn to the east. It means if you want to come back, you come back to the west.
Yeah.
So use the compass. Oh, I'm going eastbound, so I need to come back westbound. You're not going to southbound, right? So put a note, what is the first heading that I fly?
Okay.
What is after conserve?
The communicate.
Communicate. So confess, communicate, right?
Communicate,
So you go up and then call the tower. Don't be shy.
Yeah, just admit. That's
I'm
what I
student
did.
pilot, right? And then I'm a little bit lost. Can I get a radar factor to the place?
Yeah, that's what I did when you trapped me in the cross country training, and like you asked me, so what do you want to do? What do you want to do? You just let me fly without blindly without knowing, and what I did was okay, I don't want to shy, just talk to the ATC. Just can admit. Yeah,
and then for the flight school, if the airport has no radar, if the airport is non-tower airport, so there's no radar, you cannot call anyone.
Right.
Maybe you can call the approach. Yes, you can call them. They have radar. They will give you a squawk.
Yeah.
Once you get a squawk, everything fine, because you got a communication with your airplane. They can see you in the radar. But how if not? So I always recommend the school, make sure your airplane got ADS-B. So the airplane, if you have ADS-B, you install the transponder, ADS-B in, and then they can watch you in the flat radar.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
And then bring the satellite phone, bring the handheld radio, right? And even text. So the flight school should use any available resources to help the students. So let's say you're flying, and then this area we can still get a signal because you're not flying that high. If you lost and you're in ADS-B, just call the dispatch. Hey, I'm lost. Track me in the ADS-B and give me the factor.
Oh, really? You can do that?
Yeah, why not? Then while I'm on the ground, I will see, oh, there you are. Okay, I can use the flight radar and put it into my Garmin pilot or for flight, right? I can put roughly you're here, go this heading, this distance, calculate the time for you, and then you're coming. So that for the school, okay? Just make sure you keep watching the students when they are solo because that's so crucial.
Exactly.
Now, for the flight instructor, if you are in the FAA world, then I recommend you really follow 6193E. So there's a specific training here. Let's say this is the maneuvers and procedures for cross-country flight training in a single-engine airplane. Use aeronautical chart for VFR navigation. Pilotates that reckoning with the aid of magnetic compass. It's very specific there. The student must know how to use the magnetic compass. Okay?
Yeah.
So you're not going to send the students for solo unless they can prove that they are able to use all of this. Number 2, use of aircraft performance chart pertaining to cross-country flight, which is this not relevant with the loss, right? Procurement and analysis aeronautical weather report. I mean, is not completely attached with the incidents. Emergency procedures, loss is a part of emergency procedures. So you have to know how to get out from the loss situation, right? And traffic patterns procedures, no procedures, and operating practice collisions avoidance. That's also a problem somehow with the busy traffic. And use of radio VFR navigation and two-ways communication.
Yeah.
Okay, so VFR
Very
navigation,
important.
which is that homing with the
viewer.
viewer, and then two-ways communication. Procedures for operating the instruments and equipment installed in the aircraft to be flown. Wow. You see, so if the airplane, they got a 530 or
That means-
G1000,
Yeah, that means the student has to understand.
has to understand. So you cannot
see.
just let them go to the area. Okay, so that's a mosque there. There's a train, lake. You go there and back. No. The FAA wants you to completely train your students to understand how to use all the equipment on board. So when you lost and somehow you enter a restricted area or maybe you enter the violate the airspace and the FAA talk with the student, did you get a proper training on how to operate the GPS?
I see.
And then he say, hey, my instructor never told me that. That's a big problem for me as a
For the
flight instructor who
instructor.
release you. You know,
Yeah.
it means that we really need to teach the students as a flight instructor to use all the equipment and
Instruments
instrument on
available.
board. And like I said, I will intentionally, if that me, intentionally take you to a place with the hood to make sure you're lost of orientation, and I want you to come back home. That's a loss simulated procedures,
see.
right? So
Yeah.
intentionally bring the students for loss. So that's what I did, and that's on 14-day pilot. So control and maneuvering solely by reference to flight instrument, that also before the cross country. So I will make sure that's why that day you flew with the hood.
Yeah.
Why? Because I just to make sure if you get trapped into the clouds, adverse weather, then you're not going to die.
I see.
At least I know, hey, this guy can maintain level in the airplane, not banking around all over the place.
At least fly the aircraft
Fly the
properly,
airplane inside the clouds
safely.
safely.
I see.
So that's for the flight instructor. You're not violating this 6193. Before I release anybody, I always be very careful line by line as per regulation, and then I will conduct all the training to you, log everything, just make sure that you're safe to conduct any cross country, even though that's only 10 miles out of the airport.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. And then for the school, remember, my recommendation is do not sell a fixed program cost. Because not every student's got the same level of understanding.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some students need more time.
Yeah, they are in their own pace.
Correct. If
Yeah.
you sell one price package and guaranteed you're gonna pass without put another money,
Yeah.
you're gonna kill yourself as a flying school because you finally will push and push, especially your part 141 school.
Yeah.
There's a syllabus. Okay, I need to
Like,
fly like 2 hours before the stage check of solo cross country, something like that. I mean, if the student is not ready, it's not ready. Okay, you maybe need to fly like 10 hours just for that cross country. You cannot just because of the fixed program
Just because
cost.
of the formula, yeah.
Yeah, and then you are not feeling good to ask for more money.
Yeah.
But you cannot do it. This is aviation. It's different game.
Exactly.
Okay, so this conclusion, I really hope that people understand, especially the flight instructors, you have all responsibility on the students. So anything that students do, okay, you will take responsibility. This guideline I learned from the FA Safety Golf, right? I learned from NTSB how to prevent this kind of incident and how to train the students to make sure that I give them a little more tests before I send them for 150 miles straight line and coming back with total 300 miles, you know? That's so scary. The student will be there like 3 hours alone.
Exactly. I did my cross country 3.9.
3.9,
So,
you see? You
3.9
went
all
to
alone.
Santa Maria, isn't
Santa
it?
Maria.
Yeah, Santa Maria and coming back, and finally you back here one piece, and then
Yeah.
back to this table again as the private pilot.
Yeah. So from your explanation, what I heard, what I grasp is that for creating like a safe solo activity for a student pilot, it requires many elements to be involved. It's not only the student.
Yes.
It's also the flight instructor. It's also the school. So yeah, it's a really, really good lesson and like advices for not only the student but also all flight schools around the world.
So the CFI, the flight school, and the
Yeah.
students need to pay something for themselves, invest, because initially you just feel, hey, I don't really need this iPad, but now you understand why I
Yeah.
address you strongly, want you to buy the iPad with the moving maps,
Yeah.
because it's gonna save your life.
It is strongly crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all, guys. Now you know the secret recipes of creating a solo for student pilot, especially for you who wants to solo anytime soon. If you want to be a private pilot like me in just 14 days, join us in our accelerated flight training program, exclusive designed for you only in 14 Day Pilot Flight Academy. See you in our next pilot cast.